Good morning, and welcome to Seattle Atheist Church. Atheists, agnostics, skeptics, whatever you like to call yourself, you are welcome here. At Seattle Atheist Church, we call ourselves an atheist church because you will never hear anything supernatural promoted from the podium. Our church is founded on the principles of scientific naturalism and secular ethics. Truth claims are attempted here, and we stand ready to revise our thinking in light of new information. We attempt to be excellent to all conscious beings, and we believe in good, because good works in non-mysterious ways. If that sounds right to you, you are probably in the right place. So before we get started, the only thing I want to call is last Saturday was our Saturday Secular Social. It happens the third Saturday of every month at Browers in Fremont. I think it's on 65th at 3 o'clock. So everyone is welcome. It's 21 and older. Please join us for that. And then also, we do have a donation jar in the back of the room, or you can donate off of seattleatheist.church, and the proceeds from that go to rent the room. So if you'd like to support us that way, we would really appreciate it. So, without further ado,
all right, everyone hear me okay?
a little
Quiet, okay, I'm right here. Okay, much better. Thank you for coming out on such a hot, miserable day. Appreciate you coming. Hopefully this will be a good discussion. Let me start with 3 stories. We're going to start with 3 stories. Story number 1, Edward, a student at Garfield High School, has a big math test coming up. He studies many hours a night, staying up past midnight. He's working really hard. He doesn't play a single computer game that week. When he takes the test, he gets an A. Here's my question. How many people think Edward deserves the A? Come on, raise your hand. A lot of people here. Okay, just about everyone. Jack, did you raise your hand? I did. Okay, all right. Just checking. I'm going to hold this against you later. All right, story number 2. Lindsay Williams, after completing her degree in computer science at MIT, landed a job working at Google as a software engineer. After working at Google for a year, she decides to buy herself a Tesla. In particular, she buys herself a Tesla Model X with ludicrous mode. Does she deserve a Tesla? Come on, hands up if you think up. Okay, one person, okay, kind of wavering. No? Okay, halfway okay. All right, final story, last story. Lawrence Joseph Ellison was born in New York City in 1944 to an unwed mother who gave him up for adoption. In 1977, he founded a new company with $1,200 of his money. This company became Oracle, and Larry Ellison, through hard work, became one of the richest people on earth. He is now worth around $66 billion. In 2012, he bought a Hawaiian island for somewhere between $500 and $600 million. Does Larry deserve an island? Come on. Well, anyone? Oh, Athena, you're going to give him an island? I heard some boos out there. Okay. Athena will give him the island. All right, so this is a talk about dessert. And by dessert, I don't mean ice cream or a piece of pie. What I mean is in the sense of getting your just desserts, right? So think of Simba knocking Scar off Pride Rock in The Lion King. Or think of Rocky defeating Apollo Creed at the end of Rocky 1. Or Rocky 2. Or think of Rocky defeating Mr. T in Rocky 3. Or think of Rocky defeating Drago in Rocky 4. So that's what I mean by dessert. And I'm going to focus on 2 extreme notions of dessert. I'm going to call one the conservative view of dessert and the other one the liberal view of dessert. So let me start with the conservative view of dessert. I think this is probably the most intuitive notion. And according to that view of dessert, you deserve certain things. For example, if Edward worked hard to get his A for his math exam, then Edward deserved that A. And if Larry worked hard to earn his Hawaiian island, then damn it, Larry deserves his Hawaiian island. So you deserve in general the things that you're responsible for. And that's an important qualification, right? So if we found out Edward had cheated to get his A, let's say he bought all the answers to the test from another student who had taken the exam before, we'd say, I'm sorry, Edward, you don't deserve that A anymore. I'm going to rip it away from you. Or if we discovered that Edward had just guessed all the answers, he just went through and was just extremely lucky that day, again, come on, Edward, you don't really deserve that A. So there is an important sense of there has to be some sort of direct control or responsibility for the person to be able to, for us to be able to say that the person deserves the dessert. Okay, so I take that to be sort of the common sense, intuitive view of what dessert is. Dessert is something that you earn. Now I want to contrast it with what I'm going to call the liberal view of dessert. And this is at the opposite end of the spectrum. Now realize I'm talking about extreme ends here on the spectrum. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, according to the liberal view of dessert, no one deserves anything. You deserve nothing. Let me explain why. Let's consider the example of Edward again, the student who got the A. According to the conservative view, Edward earned his A because of his hard work studying for the test. But if you think about it, Edward had a lot of advantages. For example, Edward had a quiet room to study every day. Edward is able to get on school on time because his parents drive him to the school. Edward has a nice breakfast every morning, especially on the morning of the test. He got a nice pancake breakfast right before he took the test. Now, consider Lucy. Lucy also has a math test, except Lucy is homeless. She spends hours every night switching between buses looking for open homeless shelters. Her mother suffers from mental illness. She has no breakfast on the morning of the test. Lucy got a D+ on the test. So I guess my question now is, do you still think Edward deserves an A on his test? How many people still think Edward deserves an A? Okay, nice. Okay, fewer hands this time. Really? Okay, so some hands continue to be up. It's nice to see that. All right, so the intuition here is that you do not deserve anything that you're not responsible for. You do not deserve anything that's outside of your control. It's not really Lucy's fault that she didn't get breakfast on the morning of the math test. That's her parents' responsibility, right? She's still young enough. Her parents should be ensuring that she's getting her a healthy breakfast every morning. It was outside of Lucy's control, so we're reluctant to blame Lucy. But for the very same reason, it's hard to praise Edward for his A. Edward wasn't the one responsible for the fact that he lives in a stable home and he gets breakfast every morning. He just lucked out, right? Edward lucked out to have those advantages. Or let's think about Larry Ellison again. If Larry Ellison had not stumbled onto Edgar F. Codd's paper on relational database design, or if Larry Ellison had not happened to be in the West Coast during the early days of the computer revolution, then he would not have made his billions and he would not have bought his island. Again, it seems like luck. Right. Okay, so the conservative might push back on this. Conservative might say, hey, yeah, everyone starts at a different place in life. We all start at different places. But it's up to us to do the best with the hand that we're dealt. We have to do the best with what we're given. A great poker player can still win a card game when dealt a lousy set of cards, right? So you can admit, yeah, people have different starting points in life. Some people have unfair advantages, but a truly great person can overcome those disadvantages and still get across the finish line first. That's the intuition. But the problem with this argument is it ignores that our personalities and the choices that are accessible to us at any given moment of time are also outside of our control. We don't control who we are, the choices we make, our personality, what we're good at, what we're bad at, our talents. That's also something that we lock into. I think there's a conservative fantasy that if Larry Ellison switched places with a homeless man, then that newly created person, homeless Larry Ellison, would be a billionaire within a year. But let's really think about this fantasy. If we transplanted Larry Ellison's brain into a homeless man, then I don't doubt that this newly created person might do very well for himself. He would know everything that Larry Ellison knows, and we would make choices just like Larry Ellison. He would know how to buy the right stocks. He would inherit Larry Ellison's network of contacts. He would inherit all of Larry Ellison's experiences. So, it wouldn't be surprising if this new Larry Ellison homeless person ended up making lots and lots of money in a short period of time. But most people, including the homeless, don't have Larry Ellison's brain. Most of us don't have the same abilities as Larry Ellison, as evidenced by the fact that most of us do not own private islands in Hawaii. An actual homeless person can't just will himself, no matter how strongly, really, really strongly, an actual person can't just will themselves to make billions, right? You need to understand the stock market, know the right people, you need to have the right personality to take just the right types of risks to be able to get ahead in that situation. So the conservative thought that the homeless have what they deserve is hard to defend. You cannot blame someone for things that are outside of their control. I think most people accept this intuition. So it seems that the liberal view of desert is right. Luck determines everything that you get in life. No one deserves anything. So blaming Lucy for getting a bad grade on her math test is just unfair. And likewise, praising Edward for his A is also unfair. Finally, you shouldn't blame the homeless people for their bad luck. Desert, moral responsibility, praise and blame, and the emotions that correspond to them are irrational. We blame people for their bad actions and get angry at them, but we shouldn't. These attitudes and emotions were given to us by natural selection. They worked well in the tribe, but they no longer work in the modern world. Praise and blame and the emotions that accompany praise and blame are vestigial, like the appendix, wisdom teeth, or male nipples. That's really what praise and blame are. Okay, but hold on a moment. It's worth emphasizing how extreme this view is. So, how many people in the room feel angry that President Trump separated children from their families? Raise your hand. Okay, that's an overwhelming number of people. I think that's just about everyone. Okay, so according to the liberal view of desert, you cannot blame Trump for being Trump, in the same way that you cannot blame a homeless man for being homeless. Trump is a victim of luck in the same way as the homeless man. Trump just happened to luck into millions of dollars in the American presidency. From the liberal desert perspective, you're not allowed to blame Trump or to be angry at Trump. That might be an impossible demand if you want to stay human. In fact, the liberal view of desert removes emotional force from the things that we care about most in life. The philosopher Peter Strawson, in his 1962 paper, Freedom and Resentment, writes, "What I have to say consists largely of commonplaces. So my language, like that of commonplaces generally, will be quite unscientific and imprecise. The central commonplace that I want to insist on is the very great importance that we attach to the attitudes and intentions toward us of other human beings, and the great extent to which our personal feelings and reactions depend upon or involve our beliefs about these attitudes and intentions. The object of these commonplaces is to try to keep before our minds something it is easy to forget when we're engaged in philosophy, especially in our cool contemporary style. What it is actually like to be involved in ordinary interpersonal relationships, ranging from the most intimate to the most casual. So the idea is that we want to be recognizably human if we attempted to live without the reactive attitudes such as praise and blame and all the emotions that accompany these attitudes. In particular, Strawson considers situations in which one feels resentment. He says that there are two situations in which we might initially feel resentment, but then the resentment is removed. First situation is when we use expressions such as, he didn't mean to, he hadn't realized, he didn't know, and also all those which might give occasion for the use of the phrase, he couldn't help it, when this is supported by such phrases as, he was pushed, he had to do it, it was the only way, they left him no alternative, etc. The important thing about this situation is that we don't suspend our normal reactive attitudes. We're still treating the other person as a human being. But then there's a second situation, which is very different. It's different because we stop treating the person as human. In this situation, we use expressions like, he wasn't himself. He has been under very great strain recently. He was acting under post-hypnotic suggestion. In connection with the second, we might think of, he's only a child. He's a hopeless schizophrenic. His mind has been systematically perverted. Purely compulsive behavior on his part. So the idea is if we're dealing with a child or a psychopath, then we suspend our normal way of interacting with a person. You don't blame a child or a psychopath in the same way as a normal human being. You treat them objectively, not as if they're a member of your community that you're interacting with in a normal way. So, completely acknowledged, and a lot of people have pointed out, that Strawson's argument here isn't really an argument against the liberal view of desert. Saying that a belief has bad consequences doesn't make the belief untrue. In particular, the claim that it would be difficult to remain human without praise or blame, or anger and shame, is not an argument that praise and blame is ever justified. But let's think about what we would be giving up if we gave up praise and blame. Imagine that scientists created a pill that removed the emotions that accompany praise and blame. The government forces everyone to take the pill. Now let's consider some scenarios. Okay, first scenario. Edward gets an A on his math test. Edward does not feel any pride. He took the pill, remember? Edward's parents do not feel any pride. They all agree that getting an A, it's a good thing. It has some good consequences. But they just don't feel any emotion about it. Much like praising the washing machine for cleaning clothes. The machine worked properly, right? Cleaned the clothes. Or another situation. You read about another mass shooting in the newspaper. A white nationalist kills people in a crowded Walmart. You feel nothing. You can't really blame the white nationalists. You might consider whether gun control would be a good way to prevent shootings like this from happening in the future, but you would not feel angry at the gunman or sadness about the loss of life. Things just happen like a rock rolling down a hill. Just out of curiosity, how many of you would take this pill? No one?
A pill to make us not able to blame?
Not able to, so not have the normal human instinct of praise and blame, because you've now transcended this limited, vestigial need to have that anger at people that don't behave correctly, because you've transcended. We have one person. Okay, all right, that's very brave. I appreciate that. Nice. All right, conclusion. To summarize, in this talk I've discussed two views on dessert, the conservative view and the liberal view. According to the conservative view, I deserve a Tesla if I earn it. According to the liberal view, in contrast, no one deserves anything, including a Tesla, because everything is just a matter of luck. At the end of this talk, I emphasize the philosopher Peter Strawson's point that it would be really hard to be recognizably human without having attitudes and emotions such as praise or blame and shame, pride, guilt, and resentment. I advocate continuing to be human. Let's discuss.